Well, let's begin by letting you know that there is being an attack on the office of INEC in Easy local government area of Mbonyi State. The commission, INEC, that he says the office in the area was set ablaze this morning at about 10 a.m. The Independent National Electoral Commission, and it says that is investigating into what has really happened. Now, he says also earlier today that it is prosecuting some persons who have committed alleged fraud over voter cards. INEC says police has concluded investigation and handed over the case file to the commission, resulting in the successful prosecution of Nasiru Idris at a magistrate court in Sokoto, who was found to be in possession of 101 PVCs in contravention of Section 117 and 145 of the Electoral Act 2002. He is 22 rather. He has been sentenced to a year in prison. Similarly, the police in Kano State has arrested a man who was found to be in possession of 367 PVCs. The suspect has been charged to court, and the commission is pursuing the prosecution. Let's speak with Mr. Femi Falana, who joins us live from Ikeja area of Lagos. Thank you so much, Mr. Falana, for joining us tonight. I'd like to get your view on what is being a security concern. The news that just came in relation to the attack on INEC office in Ebonyi State. This is the third that is happening in less than 3 weeks. One happened in Osun, the other in Ogun State, and now again in Ebonyi State. This is a very worrisome trend. And in all of these attacks, INEC offices have been burned, and again, loss of properties, including permanent voter cards, are being experienced. How much of fear does it give you, and what kind of scenario is this trend leading us to?
Well, Sean, it's not about fear. It is about the worrisome culture of impunity in our country, whereby criminal elements operate without being arrested by the security forces. I had thought this would not happen again, because one would have expected with the attacks in Osun, Ogun, Anambra, and other places, that the state will have put a machinery in place to prevent such occurrence. If care is not taken, we are simply waiting for the next attack. And such is not acceptable in a country where there is government in place. Once criminal elements take over the monopoly of violence in any country, it simply suggests that the government has collapsed. And that is why this must be the last burning, of the offices of INEC. Issue now, we must go back to the drawing table. The INEC, in collaboration with the security forces, should prevent further attacks on the offices of INEC, because anti-democratic forces are simply saying that the election will not hold. That's the language. And the government doesn't seem to be bothered, and that's the worrisome aspect of it all.
Now, one of the reasons why I asked that question, and I was saying the trend in which, or the scenario in which this trend is leading us, is for some people to think that we do not have adequate security to conduct the election. Because immediately that happened, at the first instance, INEC called emergency meeting of the Election Security Committee, which one would think would have stopped this kind of recurrence, for example, of this kind of situation. That's why I asked the fear. Do you fear that security, just like we've seen before, you remember in the days of the former National Security Advisor, Mr. Owoye Azazi, where he muted the idea that there might be a postponement of the election by some weeks, which he did in London at the Chatham House. So this kind of scenario brings, because we've seen it before, where security situation and trend sort of lead us into this dimension. And that's why I asked if you have that kind of fear about some of the scenario in this trend is pushing us to.
Well, I do not have a fear, any fear, because I know that the government operates in an atmosphere of impunity. Just last week, to the utter chagrin of Nigerians, the Inspector General of Police and the National Security Advisor came out to say that governors, state governors, have hijacked the campaigns. They are disrupting the campaigns, and that in not less than 52 cases, violence has been recorded. How many people have been arrested? How many people have been prosecuted? Even if governors enjoy immunity, and I do not believe anybody enjoy immunity from arrest, from investigation, and prosecution later. Governors and the president enjoy immunity during their term of office. But the Supreme Court made the point in the case of Awemi and the Inspector General of Police that those who enjoy immunity can be investigated. The report may either be sent to the respective legislative houses, or the report is kept until they're out of office. Now, leaving those who enjoy immunity for a moment, what stops the police and other security agencies from arresting their agents, many of whom are armed, unleashing violence on people, killing people, and burning electoral materials? Now, we must show that we are civilized people, prepared to operate under the rule of law. But we can't just throw up our hands in helplessness when there is a government in place. I cannot, I can tell you, Shehu, what we are expecting will be worse than what we witnessed in 2014 or 2015 when the election was postponed for 6 weeks. In many parts of Nigeria today, elections cannot be conducted as of today. And I understand from security reports that criminals have taken over, have taken control in about 660 local governments in Nigeria, where you cannot talk of elections. There are local governments in Nigeria today where farmers have to pay levies imposed on them by terrorists. You can't talk of elections in those places. So the members of the political class and the government will have to sit down instead of jumping all over the place. Can we really hold elections under an atmosphere of violence and lawlessness as we are currently witnessing? Because if this trend continues, the election will be, the credibility of the election will be questioned, because there will be candidates who will say, oh, I will have won in the places where you didn't hold election. And that will be problematic.
Let me take you to the stance of INEC. INEC has since said, look, there is no going back on the use of beavers. We will transmit the result with technology. We will ensure that this election is going to be transparent. We've seen the election in Osun, we've seen in Ekiti. With this past election trend in which INEC conducted, going into the 2023 election, what kind of confidence do you think that is being built ahead of that election? For you as a citizen, do you have some level of confidence in the ability of INEC to deliver an election that will reflect the will of the people?
The position of INEC is backed by law. The Electoral Act 2022 has introduced the use of technology to a great extent in the conduct of the elections. But the enemies of democracy are trying to frustrate the INEC from realizing the objective of the law. It is the duty of Nigerians to frustrate such anti-democratic forces. As you witness in Osun and Ekiti states, only the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, among the security agencies, arrested those who were buying and selling votes. Those who were involved in Osun have been charged before the court. When I asked why the criminal elements in Ekiti were not charged, I was told that one of the a member of the ruling party, armed with thugs, accompanied by thugs, invaded the temporary office of the FCC, carted away all the material that had been seized, thereby destroying the evidence with which the criminal elements will have been prosecuted. You are going to have a lot of such incidents all over the place. So, but INEC alone cannot conduct credible elections. The people themselves must, beyond organizing rallies, the people themselves, beyond attending rallies, the people themselves must defend their votes. Under the new Electoral Act, elections will be won and lost in each of the polling units. And then there will be automatic electronic transmission of results. Efforts were made after the law had been passed by both chambers of the National Assembly to amend that provision and remove the clause that allows electronic transmission of results. Again, because of the vigilance of Nigerians, that was not allowed. And such vigilance must characterize the entire democratic process. And that is the only way INEC can succeed. But beyond that, I would like to take advantage of this opportunity to appeal to the House of Reps members to pass the Electoral Offences Commission bill, which was passed in July last year by the Senate. Surprisingly, the House of Reps has not passed the bill. This was part of the recommendation of the Ways panel as far back as 2009, that electoral offenders should be prosecuted by a commission, because INEC alone cannot prosecute all electoral offenders. And that is why INEC is asked to conduct election, register voters, and then you have a commission to deal with electoral offenses. And unless we do that very, very quickly, the 2023 election may be marred by violence of unimaginable proportion. Because right now, those who are committing offenses, electoral offenses, are not being arrested or prosecuted. And that cannot continue if you want to have good elections.
All right. So let's look at some of the trends in the election campaign that we have seen so far, and perhaps one of the reasons why INEC had also come up with their own guidelines and said, look, these are the guidelines. On Friday, they came out with some of the rules that they expect politicians to follow. Part of it include not campaigning in churches and in mosques. Part of it include the spending limit, which INEC simply reiterated what has been captured in the Electoral Act 2022. But I had a guest here on Friday, the IPAC chairman, who said the law specified how much a candidate can spend. For example, it said 5 billion naira for a presidential candidate. But the law does not, in section 90, I think, of the Electoral Act, the law did not specify for the political party. The law simply says that INEC can meet with the political party and discuss how much they can spend for the election, giving them somewhat a blank check of how much that can be spent. So combined with the $5 billion for the presidential candidate, as an institution can spend during an election. Let me get your view for what has been described as a gap in that electoral act as far as spending is concerned. Based on the view of my guest here on Friday, he says, in that respect, there's really nothing like a ceiling of spending. It is a limitless spending gap.
Well, beyond the provisions of the Electoral Act, you also have to look at the relevant provisions of the Constitution. INEC is empowered by Section 222 of the Constitution and 223 to audit the accounts of every political party every year and sanction those who cannot explain the sources of their funding. Yes, whereas the Electoral Act has stipulated the amount that candidates can spend, there is no dichotomy between the candidate and the political party as far as the law is concerned, because candidates are sponsored by the parties, and if the parties go outside the 5 billion naira stipulated for a presidential candidate, of course the law is there, and the law can be applied against the political party. So I cannot say a basis for the dichotomy between what a political party can spend on a candidate and what the candidate himself or herself can spend. So, but what is important is how to enforce the provisions of the law in a way that impunity will not be tolerated. Again, this is where we need to fast track the process of passing the Electoral Offences Commission, because that is the body that would be empowered to monitor the spending of candidates and their parties and bring to book those who violate the relevant provisions of the Constitution and the Electoral Act.
So, I mean, with the way and manner that the Electoral Act has specified it, you do not think that there might be a need to rethink or to touch up on the Electoral Act? As well, it was a politician who said it on Friday, that the law has given political parties a leeway for them to spend more than what is expected. So in terms of spending, considering the inflation rate in Nigeria, what the law specifies, 5 billion in this climate, what do you make of that?
No, I mean, when the bill was proposed, some of us criticized the institutional or statutory monetization of the electoral process, whereby majority of our people are kept out of political offices. As if that was not enough, political parties also impose nomination fees, skyrocketing nomination fees, again to keep a number of people out of the political process. But as it is today, there is no basis for the interpretation that has been given to the relevant provision of the Electoral Act on the maximum amount that can be spent on candidates. You cannot say Party A will spend 7 billion naira on its presidential candidate, whereas the law says the maximum that can be spent is 7 billion naira. So the law has not drawn any line of dichotomy between the political party and the candidate. So the political party is going to spend the money on the candidate. So there is no way the political party will be allowed to spend more than what has been stipulated by the law on the candidates that have been sponsored by them.
So give us an understanding of your assessment of the campaign so far. For you, have they been issues-based?
Well, not quite, not quite. I can tell you this. By virtue of Section 224 of the Constitution, the aims and objects of every political party shall reflect the fundamental objective and directing principles of state policy. That is Chapter 2 of the Constitution. I haven't seen that in the campaign. In other words, Section 14 of the Constitution provides that the security and welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. I haven't really seen much in terms of how political parties and their candidates are going to provide for the welfare of our people. Some of them have danced around security, improving the security architecture of the country. But beyond the verbalization, in concrete terms, how are we're just talking about INEC now. Offices being bombed by criminal elements. Is it not a shame that we do not have CCTV cameras installed around the offices of INEC so that those who are perpetrating these nefarious activities will be caught? So you cannot secure a country in this age and time without installing CCTV cameras in your cities. That's number one. Number two, the welfare of the people. Our young people are trooping out of the country. And professionals that your country has spent a colossal sum of money to train. Our medical doctors and other medical professionals are trooping out of the country. Whereas there are no hospitals here. There are no doctors to attend to our people. You know what it costs today in Europe and America to train a medical doctor? Now, they are having our doctors free of charge. And the government has decided that, come, United Kingdom, we now have about 10,000 doctors in your country, 15,000 nurses. What are you paying to our country? How can we bring back those doctors? Nobody is addressing this. Young people are what you call Japan now. And nobody has said, this is how we are going to arrange this ugly development. Nobody has said, if I become the president of Nigeria, maybe apart from Omoyele Sowore, no other candidate has said, if I become the president of Nigeria, I will not go out of this country for medical treatment. Nobody has said that. No. When are you going to build hospitals in our country? And unless you ban public officers from traveling out of the country for medical treatment, from training their children abroad when they're in power, you are not going to stop strikes in our tertiary institutions. You are not going to stop medical tourism, in favor of India, United Kingdom, and the rest of them. So these are issues that are not being addressed. The economy, Section 16 of the Constitution, part of Chapter 2, provides that the economy of Nigeria shall be managed by the Nigerian people, not by IMF and World Bank, right? Not by a few people. In fact, the Constitution says the Commonwealth shall not be concentrated in the hands of a few people or a group. So there is no room for privatization or outright sale of public assets to a few people who will simply go to the bank to take a loan to buy the assets of the country. In other places where they have thought of privatization, you inject fresh fund into the economy. Not here. In fact, sometimes the government say, don't pay. And this is what has just happened in the purported sale of Polaris Bank, where the buyers who are selling motorcycles are being asked, pay the 1.3 trillion that we have spent on revitalizing the bank for a period of 25 years. Nobody is talking of the 1.8 trillion, the assets of the bank. What 1.8 trillion? So you cannot escape. You cannot campaign in the country without addressing
all right, Mr. Falana.
Economic system.
Yeah, I have some two crucial questions before we wrap up our conversations with you. First is in respect of what SERAP did. I mean, they put a word out there that they're suing the federal government at the ECOWAS court over the inability of government not to probe oil theft in the Niger Delta region of the country. How valid is that kind of move, considering the magnitude of the oil theft that we're seeing in the country, and how much we have not been able to meet up the quota of our oil production in the country? How far do you think that can go? I mean, is this supposed to go to ECOWAS court in the first place?
SERAP has actually filed the case, but I'm going to contact the leadership to inform them, I mean, with a view to exchanging information with them. I have done a lot of work in this area, and I have petitions pending before the EFCC with respect to the monumental fraud that has characterized the importation of fuel into the country, oil theft, and the rest of them. And we're simply using information from the government. I mean, for instance, one of our petitions is against the Petroleum Equalization Fund that was given 17 billion naira in 2018 to install a mechanism for detecting, for monitoring and for tracking tankers, trucks that are taking fuel out of Nigeria, and also to track ships that are taking fuel, I mean petrol, crude oil out of Nigeria. We are asking what happened to that money. We are asking why was that mechanism not put in place. So I'm going to exchange information, and I also know two groups. I belong to one of them that has traced oil theft to the United States. We have come up with a figure of $12.7 billion. Another group has come up with a figure of about $17 billion. All that. I met the Honorable Attorney General 2 weeks ago, and he said, what do we do? All the United States government is asking, government to government, make a request for us to pursue those who have stolen your crude oil. And because we have tracked them, we have traced them. So I'm going to exchange information with SERAP so that we can work together, because we have no business with poverty. We have no business with poverty. There's another one that will interest you, which nobody is campaigning about, which is that, based on the judgment of the Supreme Court, delivered in October 2018, the Office of the Attorney General got a team of accountants, a firm of accountants, that came up with a figure of $62 billion owed by OICs. So we should collect the money. The government is
Mr.
too weak
Falana,
to collect the money.
All right. On the final note, and this is a very brief one, some leading lawyers, including of Ekiti descent, including Baba Afe, Baba Lola, Mr. Olanipekun SAN, Mr. Additional SAN, and yourself, have described the recent event in the Ekiti State House of Assembly as unacceptable. That is the impeachment of Mr. Aribisogan. Just quickly, if you can give us an understanding why these eminent lawyers, including yourself, think that that move was illegal.
Well, for us, I think it was one impunity that was too many. That house had on 2 previous occasions, engaged in such a charade whereby the leadership or speakers were removed illegally. On one occasion, the court warned the House to desist from engaging in such constitutional aberration by removing your speaker. In this case, Honorable Boyega Aribisogan was removed in Ekiti while he was in Abuja. No charges, no allegations were brought against him. So he was not given the right of fair hearing. Ditto for his 6 other colleagues who have been suspended. Under the rules of the House, you cannot suspend, you cannot impeach a speaker unless you have 2/3 majority of the members. Nobody has said that occurred in the House. Now, after our intervention, it did occur to the House members and their advisor, sorry, we had made a mistake. It was after our intervention that letters were now given to them, now accusing them, rather retrospectively, of frustrating the passage of the bill. How could the bill have been passed by Aribisogan? Because the very day he was elected by his colleagues, the House of Assembly complex was locked up by the Commissioner of Police on the instruction of somebody in that state, not the governor. Now, from our investigation, this guy decided to abuse us, the lawyers. And the guy was, the man who wrote the write-up was so irresponsible that he forgot that he was no longer in power.
So quickly,
he used the logo of the state.
What are these eminent lawyers doing in this respect? Are you taking this up legally?
No, yes. I'm saying that they use the logo of the state to commit a criminal offense. Because you can't use the logo of the state without the authorization of the government of the state. And that was what was done. A fake name was used together with the logo of the state.
All right.
To commit, a serious criminal offense. And we are taking it up so that there will be an end to such reckless illegality.
All right, Mr. Falana, we must rest it at this time. Thank you so much indeed for your time, Mr. Femi Falana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Thank you so much indeed for
Thank you very much, Sean.